NEC Article 610.55 addresses the requirements for limit switches in lifts and hoists. When considering whether a residential boat lift or davit wiring requires a limit switch, it is important to interpret the scope and intent of this article carefully. The NEC, or National Electrical Code, provides guidelines for electrical safety, and its application to specific installations often depends on the characteristics of the equipment and its usage. Article 610 specifically covers cranes and hoists. The determination hinges on whether a residential boat lift or davit is classified as a lift or hoist as defined by the code. Lifts and hoists are generally used for raising and lowering materials, and if a boat lift or davit falls under this definition, then the provisions of Article 610, including Section 610.55 pertaining to limit switches, would apply. Limit switches are safety devices designed to prevent overtravel of the lifting mechanism. They automatically cut off power to the motor when the lift reaches a predefined upper or lower limit, thereby preventing damage to the equipment and potential hazards. The requirement for limit switches is particularly relevant in situations where there is a risk of the lifting mechanism exceeding its safe operating range due to mechanical failure, operator error, or other unforeseen circumstances. Given the potential for a boat lift to cause significant damage or injury if it malfunctions or overtravels, the inclusion of a limit switch serves as an important safety measure. In a residential setting, the interpretation of the NEC can sometimes be less stringent than in commercial or industrial environments. However, the fundamental principles of electrical safety remain paramount. If the boat lift or davit is used in a manner similar to a traditional lift or hoist, and if it poses a risk of overtravel, then it should be equipped with a limit switch. The decision to require a limit switch also depends on local electrical codes and the interpretation of the authority having jurisdiction, or OJ. The AHJ is the entity responsible for enforcing electrical codes in a given area, and their interpretation of the NEC is often the final word on whether a specific installation meets code requirements. To determine whether a residential boat lift or davit wiring is required to have a limit switch, firstly, consult NEC Article 610 to understand the requirements for lifts and hoists. Secondly, assess whether the boat lift or davit meets the definition of a lift or hoist as defined by the NEC. Thirdly, evaluate the potential for overtravel and the associated risks. Fourthly, consult with the local AHJ to determine their interpretation of the code and whether a limit switch is required for the specific installation. Fifthly, consider the safety implications of not installing a limit switch, and weigh the cost of installation against the potential risks. It is generally advisable to err on the side of caution and install a limit switch if there is any doubt about the safety of the installation. The specific requirements for limit switches, as outlined in NEC Article 610.55, typically include provisions for the number of switches, their location, and their method of operation. For example, the code may require that there be separate limit switches for both the upper and lower limits of travel, and that these switches be wired in a manner that ensures they will function properly in the event of a failure. The code may also specify the type of switch to be used, such as a normally closed or normally open switch, and the voltage and current ratings of the switch. In addition to the NEC requirements, there may be other applicable standards or regulations that govern the installation and operation of boat lifts and davits. These standards may be developed by industry organizations, such as the National Marine Manufacturers Association, or by government agencies, such as the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA. It is important to be familiar with all applicable standards and regulations before installing or operating a boat lift or davit. The installation of a limit switch should be performed by a qualified electrician who is familiar with the NEC and other applicable standards. The electrician should carefully inspect the wiring and mechanical components of the boat lift or davit to ensure that they are in good condition and that they meet all applicable requirements. The electrician should also test the operation of the limit switch to verify that it is functioning properly. In summary, while the NEC provides a general framework for electrical safety, the specific requirements for boat lifts and davits may vary depending on the local interpretation of the code and other applicable standards. It is important to consult with the local AHA and a qualified electrician to ensure that the installation meets all applicable requirements and that it is safe to operate. Installing a limit switch is a prudent safety measure that can help to prevent accidents and injuries. It is also important to properly maintain the boat lift or davit and to periodically inspect the limit switch to ensure that it is functioning properly. By following these guidelines, it is possible to ensure the safe and reliable operation of a boat lift or davit. The NEC is updated regularly, so it's essential to refer to the latest edition for the most accurate and current information. Always consult with a qualified electrician or local inspector for specific guidance on your installation. They can provide tailored advice based on your specific circumstances and the local regulations in your area. The cost of a limit switch is relatively low compared to the potential cost of damage or injury resulting from overtravel. A limit switch provides an extra layer of protection and peace of mind, knowing that the boat lift will stop automatically if it reaches its maximum travel limit. When selecting a limit switch, choose one that is specifically designed for outdoor use and that is resistant to moisture, corrosion, and other environmental factors. The switch should also be properly rated for the voltage and current of the boat lift motor. Installing a limit switch is a straightforward process, but it should be performed by a qualified electrician to ensure that it is done correctly and safely. The electrician will need to wire the switch into the control circuit of the boat lift motor. The wiring should be done in accordance with the NEC and other applicable codes. Once the limit switch is installed, it should be tested to verify that it is functioning properly. The test should be performed by raising and lowering the boat lift to its maximum travel limits and verifying that the switch automatically cuts off power to the motor. The limit switch should be inspected regularly to ensure that it is still functioning properly. The inspection should include checking the wiring for any signs of damage or corrosion and verifying that the switch is still properly adjusted. If the limit switch is not functioning properly, it should be replaced immediately. In addition to limit switches, there are other safety devices that can be used to protect boat lifts from overtravel. These devices include overload sensors, which detect when the lift is carrying too much weight, and slack cable sensors, which detect when the cable is loose or broken. These sensors can be used to automatically cut off power to the motor and prevent damage to the lift. Ultimately, the decision of whether to install a limit switch on a residential boat lift is a matter of safety and code compliance. While the NEC may not explicitly require a limit switch in all cases, it is generally a good idea to install one as an added layer of protection. Consult with a qualified electrician or local inspector to determine the specific requirements for your installation and to ensure that it is done safely and properly. Remember, electrical safety is paramount, and it's always best to err on the side of caution. A limit switch is a relatively inexpensive safety device that can provide peace of mind and prevent potentially serious accidents. Consider the long-term benefits of installing a limit switch and the potential consequences of not doing so. By taking the necessary precautions, you can ensure the safe and reliable operation of your boat lift for years to come. Local codes and regulations often reference specific editions of the NEC. Be sure to comply with the edition that is enforced in your jurisdiction. This may require updating your understanding of the requirements as codes are revised over time. Also, insurance companies may have requirements related to electrical safety and code compliance for boat lifts. Check with your insurance provider to see if they have any specific requirements regarding limit switches or other safety devices. Proper documentation of the installation, including electrical permits and inspection reports, can be helpful in demonstrating compliance with codes and regulations. Keep these documents in a safe place for future reference. Regular maintenance of the boat lift and its electrical components is essential for ensuring safe and reliable operation. This includes inspecting the wiring, connections, and limit switches on a regular basis and making any necessary repairs or replacements. Consider adding signage near the boat lift that warns of potential hazards and provides instructions for safe operation. This can help to prevent accidents and injuries. If you are unsure about any aspect of the electrical installation or operation of your boat lift, consult with a qualified electrician or local inspector. They can provide expert guidance and ensure that your installation meets all applicable requirements. By following these guidelines, you can help to ensure the safe and reliable operation of your boat lift and protect yourself, your family, and your property from potential hazards. The principles discussed here regarding limit switches extend to other types of lifting equipment as well. Any device used to raise or lower heavy objects should be equipped with appropriate safety features, including limit switches, overload protection, and emergency stop mechanisms. The specific requirements for these devices will vary depending on the application, but the underlying principle of safety remains the same. In conclusion, while the specific interpretation of NEC Article 610.55 may vary depending on local codes and the AHA, it is generally advisable to install a limit switch on a residential boat lift or davit. This provides an added layer of safety and helps to prevent accidents and injuries. By following the guidelines outlined above and consulting with qualified professionals, you can ensure that your boat lift is installed and operated safely and in compliance with all applicable regulations. Electrical safety should always be a top priority.